Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December Walk with the Doc Holiday Edition. Today we're lucky to have Joanne Gordon with us. She's a nutritionist that will talk to us about heart-healthy holidays and New Year's solutions. Joanne?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I sure hope you find this useful because I do know this is a really challenging time of the year. Everyone can hear me okay, right? No? No? Okay. 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 So it's a very challenging time of the year, right? So who here, let's see a show of hands, is going to wait till January to clean up their diet? It's okay, we won't judge you, but it's very, very true. And I have to say, quite honestly, if I'm reaching out to a client that inquired about nutrition counseling, that's what I'm hearing right now. I think I'm just going to wait till January because we know that we're up against a lot of temptation, socialization, we're out of our routine, right? So share with us together if you'd like to, any struggles that you're having right now. Like, what would you say? Is it stress? Is it too much temptation? Anything? That's okay, you don't have to.
All of the above.
What's that?
All of the above.
All of the above, exactly. And what the problem is too, is that there's really just a handful of holidays, right? But we start on Halloween. Pretty much that's when the trouble begins, right? We have Halloween candy, and then we don't want it, so we give it to someone else, someone gives it to you, it's everywhere. And then we roll into Thanksgiving and onward and so forth. So, what makes it hard, right? I mean, most of us, I hope, have some nutrition and health goals. So what are we up against? Stress, right? Socialization, there's a lot of parties going on, and maybe you're involved in maybe baking or cooking some different goodies, or you have traditions that you follow and traditional recipes that you follow, right? So who here would like to say, besides that, is there anything that you want to share about the holidays and pressure or traditions? It's okay. Yeah, please.
With baking, what can I replace butter with?
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, so I provided you guys a really nice handout on swapping, on substitutes. And I have to say that this is something that I do all the time. And those that work with me know that I'm always looking for ways to modify a recipe. So not just baking, and I really feel that we don't have to take away all of our joys, like all the foods that we really like. And I've had some people say to me, listen, this item is non-negotiable. I'm not giving it up. And that's fine, but you can still make it healthier. There's so many ways to modify a recipe. And with baking, I have it in a handout here. How do I not have it now? Thank you. Yeah, so one thing that I use for butter or oil is applesauce. So you can use applesauce. I've used Greek yogurt for butter replacement. It does work. And the good news with applesauce, you want to get the unsweetened applesauce. But because it's sweet, you can actually cut down on the sugar as well. So it's a win-win. And you can change out the flours. So if it calls for white flour, you can always use a healthier flour, whether it's whole wheat, sorghum flour, oat flour. There's a whole host of flours that you can use. And you can, like I said, reduce the sugars. So basically just by replacing your fats with something healthier. Avocado also can be used depending on the recipe. Another thing that I do is a flax egg. So everybody's heard of flaxseed. So you can just take ground flaxseed, like 1 tablespoon to 2 to 3 tablespoons of water is 1 egg. So you just let it sit for a few minutes, it becomes gelled, and it looks sort of like an egg would, how it's kind of like wiggly and jiggly, and then that could be an egg replacer. So I have a chocolate chip cookie recipe that I make, and I use oatmeal, and I turn it into a flour. I use coconut sugar, and I use a flax egg, and and almond butter or peanut butter, so I don't even have to add a fat, and they're delicious. So there's a lot of ways to really come up with holiday solutions, and all throughout the year. So one thing that I'd like to, let me just see if there's any other questions on modifying a recipe or baking. Anybody? Well, those are great tips, and I highly recommend it. So one thing I want to say about when you're going to an event, you're socializing, and there's probably a lot of that going on. A lot of us will show up hungry. will often skip a meal, right? I'm not going to have lunch because there's going to be my favorite foods. There's going to be a lot of, desserts, etc. So you may skip. You might not eat lunch, and you'll just show up, and then you're hungry, and then you're very, very hungry. And there's all bets are off at that point, right? And then the meal might be late, and now you're at the snack table. And you find yourself overeating some of your favorites. And quite honestly, if you're really hungry and maybe your blood sugar's a little low from not eating, we get what we call hangry or hungry and irritable. So now you have no control. You're craving those sweets. You're craving those refined carbohydrates. So you really can't even mindfully make good choices. Okay, so don't arrive hungry. Have a light meal or a snack, a glass of water, a piece of fruit. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you want to curb that appetite. And also staying hydrated is very, very important. This time of year also, I do notice that a lot of people don't drink as much water because it's cold out and we don't feel like drinking water. But now, hydration is very, very important. And often we confuse being thirsty for being hungry. And it is still important, regardless of that, to really make sure you do maintain hydration. And one thing that I do enjoy is actually warm water or hot water with squeeze of lemon or lime juice, and it's really quite refreshing. So if cold water or room temperature water might be more appealing, but you still want to keep your water intake up. But again, you don't want to go to a party hungry or dehydrated because your body is going to send you mixed signals and you're going to be overeating and craving, okay? Any questions so far? Yeah.
Will you consider coffee as a kind of water to hydrate your body?
Well, it's fluid, but it is also a diuretic, so caffeine, especially caffeine. So it is going to go kind of right through you. So typically we want to replace, when you have a cup of coffee, we should have a glass of water. And another thing about water that I would recommend too is when you get up in the morning, we do lose water through the night when we sleep, and then we urinate. When you get up in the morning, before you have a cup of coffee, I would recommend having a glass of water first. So hydrate and then have your coffee. And it's just better overall for your body. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like a different story. My mom skips breakfast and she skips her meal. But what's the most important not to miss?
So that's a good question. So some people actually find intermittent fasting beneficial, and there are many benefits to it. I mean, often I will say, if somebody has diabetes and certain health conditions, to definitely run it by your physician. But skipping breakfast does have its benefits if you're truly fasting for over 12 hours or so. But I think it depends on the individual. If someone has diabetes, I don't really recommend skipping any of the meals because, especially if you're on medication, you want to make sure you're having food because your medication is controlling your blood sugar. And if you're not eating a carbohydrate or food, then your blood sugar is going to go down. So I would recommend, they still say breakfast is for champions. It's still a great meal. I still think it's very important. But not eating late into the night or right before bedtime. So it is a little individual, but I don't know if I really answered your question. Okay. And another thing that I would recommend is to bring something to the event. Okay, so if you can, I always do. Can I bring something? Of course, bring anything that you like. So I will make one of my modified recipes that I hope others will enjoy as well. And then I'm guaranteed to have something that I want to eat. Okay, then I'll make that my priority, and then I'm careful with my other choices. And that brings me to another good point would be when you come to an event. This could be a restaurant, it could be a buffet table, it could be a sit-down dinner, but before you just start filling up your plate or allowing someone else to fill up your plate, scan the table, right? Take a look at what's there, because sometimes we start and when we get to the end of the line, we realize, oh wow, here's the vegetables, here's the salad, and I filled up, I have no room now for the healthy things. So scan the table, see what is your priority, like what's important to you. I want to remain eating some healthful foods. So just don't be impulsive. It's probably the best advice I could give. Think about what your goals are, which is very, very important. Whenever I work with a client and I really want to find out how important it is to them to make change, we talk about your why. Why is this important to you? Why are you here to make nutrition changes? And if anybody is managing a health condition, that should be very important to you as well, right? And so keep in mind that many of the foods that we are enjoying this time of year are also high in sugar, high in salt, and high in fat, and saturated fat, which is certainly not going to be supportive of our heart health. So you want to remember your why, why is this important to me? And it's really balance and moderation and being mindful. I always suggest we're very impulsive beings, right? We kind of just see it, we grab it, and we eat it. It looks good, it smells good, I'm just gonna eat it. And then later, we're a little sorry. Oh, I shouldn't have had that. I shouldn't have had this either. So just pause for a moment and think about it. Is this something that I really want? Maybe it's a non-negotiable. I wait all year round for this special treat. Or, you know what, I can do without it. I'd rather have something else. And something else you can do is just take a bite, right? You don't need to always eat the whole thing. When I go out to dinner, I even do this. I might not really need dessert. And if we're mindful and we really think about what we're eating and enjoying it, sometimes a mouthful or two is really all you need. You don't need to have that big piece of cake or a big bowl of ice cream. So think of it that way, maybe just a little taste of different foods that you enjoy. Excuse me. So I always recommend the healthy plate. On your one handout, you'll see that image of the plate, okay? So even with my clients, I always encourage, we really need to eat more produce, more non-starchy vegetables and or some fruit. These are good for us. These are high in antioxidants, fiber, phytochemicals, vitamins, minerals, and they're really not very high in calories. And the carbohydrates they contain are not really that bad either. They're low. So I always say build your meal around that if you can, and then you want to build the rest of your meal around that produce. So you can see in that image, I'll hold up my plate. So the green is your produce. So if you're at a party or you're even at a restaurant, think about how can I fill up on less and something more healthfully, right? So you want to look and see, what do I have here? Oh, there's a salad, there's Brussels sprouts, whatever, right? You fill up on that. And then on the other side, the other corners, we just do less. Maybe you choose a nice protein. And then for the holiday eating, normally I would say your fiber-rich complex carb in the other corner. But for the holiday eating, maybe indulge in your favorite. And this way you can control the portions of what you're choosing, okay? And if it is one of your favorites, just have less and put it in that corner and build it around the produce. It really does work. It's very helpful because we fill up on fiber-rich foods, okay? So when we eat slower and we're mindful, we'll definitely eat less. So another tip I wanted to recommend, especially if you're hungry, is it really does take about 20 minutes for the mind and the stomach, the hormones, the satiety hormone, to kick in. So if we're eating quickly and we're really hungry and we eat a lot in 10 minutes, we're gonna go back for more because our brain hasn't acknowledged the fact that yes, we are full. Not until you've overeaten, and then has anybody ever experienced that? And you're like, oh, like maybe a half an hour later you feel really, really stuffed. So keep in mind just to mindful, not impulsive, look around at the table, at your choices, fill up on the better, and then have a little place for your special indulgence. But eat slower, take your time, and also enjoy the socialization, right? We often make all these events about food. And really, when you think about the holiday season, it's really about gathering with loved ones and friends. So remember why you're there and don't make the focus all about food. And chit chat with someone and enjoy while you're there. But there's also some pressure. Who's ever had the pressure from, oh, you must have this. I worked all day on this. You must, and you must try this. And oh, Aunt Mary made this just for you. And there's a lot of guilt and pressure that goes with this. And so many of us will overeat due to that as well. So there's some little strategies for that. You can say, things like, I'm pacing myself. Everything looks wonderful, thank you. I'll get to that in a bit. And you can also change the subject, right? And just move on to something else. But people do get insulted. Has anybody ever experienced that? They do get insulted. I've insulted a few people. But you know what? They'll start to understand also what's important to you. And in time, especially your loved ones, they'll actually go out of their way to make healthier foods for you. I always give my sister credit for this. Whenever I visit my sister that lives in Vermont, she's always very excited when I arrive because she's, made me all these modified desserts and snacks. So people will do that for you. But we also want to remember, we talked about how to manage the event, the socialization. What do we do in between, right? So, I don't know, some people are celebrating different events and different holidays. But for instance, like Halloween, it's almost a month until Thanksgiving, but we do find ourselves still indulging. So what can we do in between? We want to try, and during the holidays, throughout the entire season and in between these events, you want to try to maintain some form of routine, okay? We're very routine beings, right? But this time of year, we really kind of get thrown off our game. And the stress and again, the parties and holiday shopping. So you want to try to keep your routine. So hopefully you're all exercising like we did today. So maintain your exercise routine the best you can. I mean, there may be days where you can't get it in, but maybe just do less that day. And try to keep consistent meal times. So back to your question, right, about the meal time. So even during this season, it is important to try to maintain balanced meals and meal times, because when we skip because we've been shopping at the mall all day, we're going to come home and we're going to overeat. And then you're going to make your holiday cookies and you're going to wind up indulging on them too. You have one too many. So think about that. Bedtime, sleep, all of that is very, very important. Your hydration, like we mentioned earlier, make sure you're continuing to drink water and staying hydrated. And that way you're not going to confuse dehydration and or hunger when we're skipping meals with, cravings and things like that. Because I've had people say to me, I don't know why I'm craving so much after dinner, but they often don't eat balanced earlier in the day. And that's just a natural physiological response that happens, okay? So you want to really try to eat balanced. Balanced meaning a protein, a produce, a fiber-rich carbohydrate, like on the healthy plate. And you also want to, this is a very good tip too, especially anyone that has diabetes, but it's very, very good if you have a large meal, if you can move 10 minutes afterwards. That'll help your body get the glucose out of your bloodstream if you start moving right after you eat. So it doesn't mean you have to go for a power walk and you feel nauseous. You just want to move, okay? And avoid temptation whenever possible. So at home, if you're cooking yourself, you don't have to, like the candy for Halloween, we don't need to leave the candy bowl out, right? If you just made cookies, maybe put them away, put them in a tin and out of sight, out of mind. But when we have that temptation around, we tend to not care because it looks good, smells good, and all of that, right? And again, with your friends, socializing, the same thing. Just maintain that routine the best you can. If you're at a restaurant with a friend because you're out shopping together, or even just like enjoying like holiday lights, and then you stop somewhere for a bite to eat, just be mindful. Think about what you can eat that's going to be better for you, and you can still indulge too. But we don't want to have this indulgence starting from October 31st to January or December 31st, right? Because New Year's Day we start, and that's where resolutions come in. How many people have set up a resolution? And how did you do? Exactly. So resolutions are usually unrealistic because we're really feeling bad about ourselves because we, usually this time of year, we're just going kind of off the rail. So January 1st, we're pretty gung-ho. We want to set big resolutions. I'm never eating sugar this year. I'm done. I'm going to give up sugar. I'm going to give up all fast food, or I'm going to give up eating at night. It doesn't matter what it is. It's too broad. It's too unrealistic. So what I've recommended, and I have a handout for you, is really just beginning to set small daily solutions. So, and I have a list of different solutions for you. If you build small solutions and you choose even one a week, one a month, it doesn't matter. It depends on how motivated you are and how committed you are. And it needs to be a choice that you truly want to work on. If it's something that, like if I told you, I want you all to start drinking 8 ounces of water 8 times a day next year, you know, you have to decide what's going to work for you, right? So find some goals or little solutions and start incorporating them. So for instance, maybe it is taking a 10-minute walk every single day instead of saying I'm going to join the gym and go 4 days a week. That may not be realistic, but what is realistic is finding some form of joyful movement that you can do every day. Whether you're home because it's snowing out, right? There's YouTube channels with videos, whatever it is that you want to do, okay? Or, you know what, I want to have a sweet treat, and maybe you do have a sweet treat every day, but you're mindful of it, and you're mindful of not overdoing it throughout the day with other treats, okay? Having a glass of water before your meal will also help fill you up. So that could also be another tip, right? So you guys choose, and I did leave a little space for you to decide on what you want to start for January 1, and maybe you can write down a choice, a solution. And this is how we build little habits lead to those big resolutions, right? So maybe you do have a goal of weight loss, but you start adding these daily solutions little by little. You're getting into your walking routine, you're drinking water, you're eating a balanced meal 3 times a day, and before you know it, that 20 pounds is off without some big unrealistic goal that's putting a lot of pressure on you. And then when people say to you, how are you doing with your goal? You don't have to say to them, not so great. Okay, so you just want to be realistic. You want to take care of yourself. Remember what your why is. Why is it important to really take care of your body? What is your goal? Your cardiologist is here. Maybe you've discussed that. And just start slow. And just be kind to yourself. Any questions?
When you say drink water, can you drink tea or juice or something?
And the fluid does help, but I mean, water is really what our body truly needs. But of course, all the fluids help. Eating fruits and vegetables that are water dense, they are going to provide some water for your body, some hydration, but it is still important to have, you know, water. And remember that the caffeine is more of a diuretic, so it is fluid, but then we're going to urinate and we lose it, and we should replace it with water. You know, but you know, you can flavor your water. If a lot of people tell me they don't like water, so you can flavor it with lemon, you know, anything, cucumbers, fruit, you know, fruit infused. There's little drops of stevia that can give it a little hint of flavor if that's what you wish. So whatever it is for you, just to help you stay hydrated.
Well, thank you very much, Joanne, and
Thank you.
we'll be around if you have any other further questions, and we'll see you all in New Year in January. Thank you. Have good holidays.